So now that we have defined a composite primary key for distribution details using Fluent API entity configurations, let's see how we can do something similar for the priest entity, where we would want to restrict the length of the priest name property. So going back to the project, as usual, I would first make sure that I'm using this namespace called system.data.entity.model configuration. We will need that for configuring, and I would also, in a very similar fashion like we did for the other entities configuration, even here I'll define a class called priest config, which will derive from entity type configuration, and for it will be strongly typed for our entity. Right. So we do have the name property here. Let's see how we could restrict the length. So if you see there, so first we need to have the constructor created for it. I'll say CTOR tab. So I have the constructor created, and then it would give me the access for configuration methods. So there is one such method which says property, and we want this name. And again, so this is method chaining. So every method can be chained further for configuring other things on it. So this is what, or this is why they call these as fluent APIs. So instead of going for complex configuration mechanisms, so this is more fluent, something like you can think about it naturally. So property name has max length of, let's say, 30. Right? So this is one way we could configure the max length for any such property. It will be translated with similar constraints in the database in whatever language that particular database understands, because you might be working on a SQLite database or a MS SQL Server, Oracle, so on and so forth. It would also be a good idea to make sure that the locker numbers are unique. So remember, one locker cannot be assigned to more than one priest. So we can go ahead and do that with a function called hasIndex. And on top of it, we can say is unique. So this would make sure that there's a unique constraint on locker number. Now there is yet another way of configuring the entities by using a namespace called system.componentModel.dataAnnotations. I am not planning to use this for certain reasons. I would strongly encourage you all to look for entity framework documentation as to why Fluent APIs are better than data annotations. Nevertheless, I would want to show one such configuration through data annotations. Let's say I want to do the same thing. I want to make sure that the name property has a maximum length of 30. So what I would do is, now since I have got this namespace, I would come to the name property, open square parenthesis, and immediately you would get an attribute called max length, wherein you can specify that it is 30. You could do it this way, or this way, the effect will be the same. When this translates to a SQL statement being created on the database, you would have a similar effect whether you follow the Fluent API or the data annotations. So let's just go ahead and take this off for now, and we'll stick to Fluent API. Now that we have our entities and their configurations, their relationships established, let's go ahead and look how we could start using this in our application. The first step would be to create a data context, if you remember. So we'll take a look at these things in the upcoming video.